Hi, I'm Bruce Money. I'm Executive Director of the Global Management Center here at Brigham University. I am also Professor of Marketing and International Business. I teach MBAs and Executive MBAs in the Global Management Core class. What we're doing here today is talking about our international study programs and what we do specifically when students leave and when students come home. Because at BYU, we have a well-known saying in these parts that the world is our campus. Well, if the world is our campus, we need to get out there on campus. And that's what study abroad and any international study program does for students and faculty. Now the question becomes, after that amazing experience, what then? When you come home, and you need to articulate that experience to not just family and friends, but employers in a job interview. What do you say? What would best position that experience to leap off the resume, to sell yourself as a job candidate, and convince the employers that this was truly a meaningful experience, full of rigor, academic contact. We call it a study abroad for a reason. And that's what we try to coach students on.
And my name's Jonathon Wood. I'm the managing director here at the Global Management Center and also manager of our Cyber Grant, which is Center for International Business Education Research. We're one of 15 of schools and really happy and honored to be so, one of those schools. As Bruce was saying, as we talk today, hopefully one of the things that we're helping you to do is to think about what can I take from this and alter for our current situation at our college or our university, that you tie your academics to your programs and the types of jobs that the students that you're working with are getting. We're just hoping to give you some thoughts and frameworks, not necessarily use our exact words, although if you do, we'd probably be honored if you did, but just to give you a way to think about it, because we've discovered a need for this. I did some research at one point and read some articles where if a student talks about a study abroad, the recruiter many a times thinks pub crawl through Europe, and that's not exactly what we try to get across when we're trying to get a job. So we'll go down that road today, and hopefully there's something that can help. But I think we'll start with academics and connecting the learning to the experience, and Bruce will cover that for us.
Yeah. So my home discipline, my PhD, is in marketing, and therefore I come to this experience with the lens of international marketing. And different professors take with them different lenses from their home disciplines. That being said, there's a framework for international business that just about any student can put in place on which to hang their international experience as they visit companies, as they have cultural visits. So before we go, we have a preparation class that talks about culture and frameworks of national culture. The students right away are going to be exposed to differences in culture and how do they deal with that personally, how would they deal with that professionally. We look at the Hofstede frameworks and the Edward T. Hall frameworks of context and so forth, and those are all well known in the international business literature and in the textbooks. So that's held the winter semester before the spring and summer programs take off. Then, just before we fly, say a week at the end of June before a July 1st fly date, take all day long in a classroom and burrow into the frameworks that they may have their first exposure to during that preparation class or during our online class of international business. We would take a topic like international negotiations, one of my specialties within the wheelhouse of marketing, and do simulations, see how culture applies to the various bodies of knowledge within negotiation. And we prepare to visit the companies and the countries by doing reports, pre-work on what this company is about, so that they can show up at the company with some intelligent questions and engage with our presenters who are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. Those frameworks then become the basis of the study abroad. Again, it's study here, abroad there. In our model, most of our programs are not resident at universities. We put in place the content here and on the road in conjunction with their experience with the companies, how business is done on the ground in Latin America or Europe or Asia. And so after a company visit, and we'll do, in a given week, depends on travel, 2 or 3 in a given day, depends how many countries in that week. Let's say that in a month's time we do 16 company visits. After any given factory tour or company visit, I'll get back on the bus with students and say, all right, what in that visit did you see or experience that confirmed or disconfirmed a flattening world, for example, from Thomas Freeman's book? An old framework, but it's kind of the seminal flashpoint in the debate of globalization. And which flattener of the 10 we studied did you see exhibited or discounted by what you saw in that company visit? And I'll try to make it a little fun. I mean, they're jet lagged. It's not the ideal classroom to be rolling along. I'll bring some high chews that I pick up at Costco, and those that come up with, I'm not sure it's the right answer. I mean, in the case method, it's all about analysis for action, but give me something that you learned there. I'll throw out a high chew, and it's amazing how students key into that, not just for the candy, but for some incentive to pay attention to what the professor is going to talk some more about. Oh my goodness. And I'll give the mic to students, particularly if it's wireless on the bus, to get them talking to each other. So that content, and it's documented in a rather large term paper at the end of the experience. What did you learn about these frameworks that that was part and parcel with what you experienced? What did you learn in the company visits that demonstrated that or discounted it? I'm open to both sides, because there's no such thing as a bulletproof case or argument or framework, which we all know. Personally, what did you experience? What do you think will help you in your future career? They do that for credit, and it's credit well earned. So study here, abroad there, frameworks, connections, connecting these dots between what they experienced in the classroom here and really in their college career leading up to that trip, any international content that they had. In the paper and the seminar, which Jonathon will talk more about. Okay, now that you've had some time to think about it, it's the end of August. School's just started. Let's talk about this again as you've had a chance to marinate it a bit. What out there demonstrated a flat or spiky world? What out there discounted Hofstede's dimensions of culture or confirmed them? What out there confirmed or discounted Hall's framework or context, or the Lewis model, or a number of other models of national culture or international business? And that's the academic content piece, what most professors do on our 20-some-odd programs. I
think one of the things that you do when we do hold the seminar is when you got the slide up there, what did it learn for you? What can it do? And it's important that right then we start engaging the students, because we'll get them to raise their hands. And somebody give us a story when you were in Germany. What did you see in this room? And there's students that are in there, and that kind of triggers another student to say, oh yeah, we did something kind of like too. Okay, who else has got a story? They'll put the story up, and then you'll start connecting that story to whatever academic thing you're putting on the slide. Like, is the world flat or spiky? Yeah. You'll get them engaged, as opposed to just us talking at them, us having a conversation with them and connecting the dots, right?
And having them talk to each other, right?
Right.
Because we bring together the programs disparate from the four corners of an ever-flattened world. Oh, you went to China. Oh, you went to Germany. Oh, you went to Brazil. What did you see? Oh, so you both went to General Motors plants. Huh. What did you learn about global supply chain in Asia versus global supply chain in Europe? One of the classic flatteners. And throwing a little pizza doesn't hurt either to get
Right.
them get them to come. We're happy to do that.
I think that one of the interesting that happens sometimes is somebody will tell a funny story, and everybody will laugh, but that causes everyone else to think, oh, did something like that happen on my trip, or our countries weren't like that when we were there.
Right.
It's that group compare and contrast, because when they're on the trip together and they're all in Germany, for example, they're all having a similar kind of experience, and they don't realize what similarities or differences are happening with the group that went to Asia, or, went to India or something like that. So that room of the compare and contrast really brings home the academic side of things when you're talking about that, and they can see this country versus that country versus this experience versus that experience.
Yeah, so study abroad, study. We circle back to the study at this seminar at the end of the summer, first part of school. It's a little tricky to schedule that, right? Because it's, classes are starting, students are shopping for classes, and their time frames don't always line up to when we would like to do that. But it's critical, and a lot of the schools in our networks, right, do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not just us, business schools all over the country do something like this as a follow-up, as a debrief to what they experienced.
Yeah. Once we've covered the academics, and I know that you'll be able to see some of these slides as we're talking about it, we move into now that we've talked about the academic side of it, what does all this mean for you? Because in the end, students are mainly here to get jobs, and it's very easy for them to put on their resume, I went on a study abroad to these countries, and they don't recognize how to pull out some of the things that they've learned through the process. What challenged them? What did they have to change about themselves? What surprised them in the world? And how do you turn that into an articulation? One of the things that I like to show them is this slide, which we'll put on the screen. The risk, it's all in the mind, because it's this idea that if they just put study abroad, many recruiters think pub crawl through Europe. And they're not making any connection to the solidness of what they're learning while they're out there. But what we have learned by experience and by working with the students and them coming back and telling us is, if you can help them articulate and they learn to bring that out in the interview, they'll get extra time in the interview. They'll get a second interview, and each one of those steps helps. And I've had multiple students come in and say that being able to talk about their study abroad and what it taught them and changed in them and caused them to see in the world and how that makes them a better employee has gotten them the second interview, the graduate position, the job when it's all done. It's not the only factor, but it's one of those set apart factors, which is really crucial, because they may be in the interview 30 minutes after one of their fellow students from their own universities. They've all taken the same classes. They've all done similar internships. But when they talk about this study abroad and how it's changed them, now the recruiter's interested, and it begins to set them apart a little bit.
Well, and for students, I call it the "you did what" factor. So you're a supply chain student, and you went to the Ford factory in Brazil, and you had some pretty interesting experiences there. Tell me more about, and the student can talk about what he or she learned about supply chain, about manufacturing, about operations management in Latin America on the ground. Recruiters light up, and students have told me, "You did what? You talked to? I went to Procter & Gamble in India, and how does Procter & Gamble market detergent in India, big boxes of soap that sits on your shelf like we do in America. No, there's not the room, there's not the affordability. That may be a month's wages to some Indians. So there's these little sachets, little packets. When they can afford it, they will buy the shampoo or the detergent or whatever it is. That's a very different supply chain, a very different marketing mindset in one of the world's largest targets for any marketer. That's interesting in an interview. And any marketing student that's done that is going into the consumer products end of marketing, an interview or a company's going to be interested in that. So that's the kind of vocabulary, storytelling we try to imbue them with.
Yeah. And to that point, the idea of how to articulate that is the final crux of the seminar that we do them, because we can tell them that, they can sit there and learn that, but we also have to give them a little bit of a framework of, I need to recognize what happened and figure out what that company needs in relation to that, and then say it in such a way that that company goes, oh, okay. So for example, we'll work with students and we'll talk about something like this, or ask them to think of a story. What did you see when you were in Europe? Oh, this company in this country, I saw that they were very sensitive to time. But in this country, they were less sensitive to time. And that I had read it, but until I saw it in action, I didn't exactly know. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Employee or employer, I can be a better employee now because I've heard it, I've seen it in action, and now I've internalized it. So which means I'm ready to work on an international team because I get it. And I now know how to have that in mind, to work with people from other countries that may come from a country where time doesn't mean the same thing as it does in another country. And the recruiter is sitting there thinking, oh yeah, okay, that's right. We do have lots of teams and they're from all around the world. And the fact that you get that and can be patient with that and know how to manage workflow with that, that's really valuable. So it's them making that connection to what the employer needs. But what most students don't think about is when they're going on a study abroad, I need to be aware of what employers need. They get it when they're working with career services, when they're working on their resume, but with the study abroad. So one of the things we'll do is show them a few slides, and we'll put those up here on the screen. Some of the skills that employers are looking for that are maybe not super apparent right off. Global communication skills, global perspectives, cultural awareness, global insight. We have several recruiters that work here. One of them talks about that they want to find people that are overachievers and distinguish themselves in their extracurricular activities. That's an ideal employee. We can help with that. We can talk about that. When they ask about that, helping the students understand, yeah, bridge to the fact, well, I've got something I did. I didn't have to do this for my major, but I was really interested to learn at how marketing works across the globe. So I paid the money and took the time and went on this global marketing, and all of a sudden they've bridged into the study abroad program, and they've been, the recruiters like to talk about international stuff too. Everybody likes to travel.
Because precisely, recruiters, is there such thing as non-global business these days? Right. It really is not. Of our 33 top recruiters for the MBA program, 29 of those have offices in Brazil, and 26 have offices in Europe, and 28 have offices in Asia. I mean, it's the preponderance of job activity that our students are going to get is related to international business. So cat's out of the bag. It's important, not just for our students or their personal experience, but for their jobs, for their careers, and for the recruiters that are going to hire them. And this kind of debrief at the end of their experience helps them articulate that to recruiters, and they take note.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we do is we take a minute and we use these stories that had started coming out in the earlier section when we were talking about the academics, but we begin to tie them back in to what employers want. So I'll ask for hands and somebody tell me a story of something they learned based upon the discussion that we have of what skills employers want. One of the things we'll put up on the screen is, we'll put this up, skills you may develop. And it's just this long list of skills that they might be able to develop depending on their study abroad. Now, some of our study abroads are project-based, so that's very easy to put on a resume, right? I did this for this company. We ran into these challenges. This is how we worked through it. But others where you're just visiting and learning about businesses, it's not always quite as apparent to the students. So we'll put this slide up, which we'll add to the screen so that you can see that. But I'll leave it up while we have them start telling stories. And they'll tell us a story of, they went into a company and visited supply chain or whatever the case may be. And I'll say, okay, great. So what did you learn? And it'll take them a second to think, oh, well, I was surprised that I saw this, or I was surprised when they told us something about the business. I hadn't expected that was the case in Thailand or wherever. And then I push them a little further and say, okay, so turn that into a statement then for me that an employer would like to hear. And they'll struggle through this. They'll get a little bit, and I'll coax them along and bring them along, and they'll usually say something to the effect of, yeah, I was surprised to learn that, gosh, I don't have a good example. I was surprised to learn X, Y, and Z about the company. I didn't know that. And that's where they'll stop, and I'll say, and it taught me that, or it changed me in a way, and they'll say something like, I didn't realize that when I work and I work with people from around the world, I'm going to have to change the way I think about communication skills or communication styles. And they'll stop there, and I'll say, so that means to you as an employer that I am now ready to ... And they'll have to work through that. And I'm now ready to work on a team. I'm more comfortable to hit the ground running, and I'm going to be less surprised with different work styles, or realizing that I have to be working with somebody in India on a phone at midnight, and it's work time for them, or they're on the phone at midnight and work time for me, and the difference of communication that's going to charge or cause. And the recruiters are saying, wow, they're really getting this. They're seeing the value that they got out of the study abroad. I will then show this wonderful slide, my Fanny Pack of Power. And I'll tell them about how when I was a student and traveled, fanny packs were cool and in. And of course, they'll all laugh at me. But then, although I should say that I guess fanny packs are coming back in now, so maybe I'm cool again. Anybody watching this that might know me, don't make any comments on that last statement. But what I'll talk to them is, the Fanny Pack of Power is stories that you've thought of ahead of time before you walk into an interview that illustrate things that you learned, that you've thought about the impact that this trip has had on you, or this experience or internship. This applies to internships. This applies to exchange programs, all of those things, faculty-led study abroad. But if they think about the stories, what it means, what they learned, and what that makes, or how that makes them a better employee ahead of time, then when they're in the nerve-wracking situation of being interviewed and grilled by somebody, they're ready. They can pull that story out. They can have it in their mind. They've thought about it. They're prepared to make that statement. Otherwise, in a high-pressure situation, many people are like, well, I don't know. That's a really good question. How do I connect to that? And they're stuck because they hadn't pre-thought about it. So we'll talk about this. And then the word that we will leave them with is articulate. Articulate. As part of our process, we have them do reflective papers on what they learned, what they saw, what, like we said before, what challenged them, what was different, just to open their minds, because we all know how it is. They come back and that next semester starts, they start interviewing for jobs. And sometimes that trip can get filed away as, what a great experience, it was a lot of fun, without the benefit that they got coming out of it. Because these trips have so much benefit. They don't even know it. I'm a personal believer in, even if you didn't visit a personal, excuse me, let me say that again. I'm a personal believer then in, even if you don't visit a business or a major business, but to get a passport, get on a plane, go overseas, smell it, touch it, taste it, be there, that has value to help you get a job, I think. But then beyond that, the business visits that we do and the academics and the projects can be all tied together. And when articulated for employers, it's better for the student. But I will add, I think it's better for the employers. We've noticed a little bit of a mismatch in that companies say, yes, we're global, but recruiters come to campus and they don't ask anything about it. They ask their standard questions for the onboarding and hiring process. But I've talked to a couple of the recruiters and I've said, is this stuff important to you? And they say, oh yeah, our company believes in it. It's really important. I say, but do you ask about it? No. The student just needs to bring it up on their own. But it is important to you. Oh, absolutely. So what I've learned from that is we have to be the ones to help them bridge to it, articulate, and draw out the specific learning moments and lessons from the whole experience. We're happy to talk more. We'll put, at the end of the video, we'll put our contact emails on here in case you'd like to learn a little bit more, talk to us about what we do. But we found that it's very important and we found that it works. But if we don't teach this, most students are so focused on getting that grade, that A, getting that test in, that they don't pause to think about, oh, I can use this to set myself apart. And that's what our end goal is. That's what we're hoping for.
So let us know how we can help you with that effort. We'd be more than happy to.